So anyone have a shop like this? Maybe you've seen one, maybe it's a garage. My garage many a time starts to look like this. Um, you know, sometimes my desk here at school looks like this, but if you say, hey, I need this paper, I'm like, give me a minute. And I know it's like, the bottom half of that pile, the third stack down, whatever it is, and I find it, but it's not conducive for anyone to walk in and just pick up that bolt off of that table where you left it under 5 different things. That's kind of what we look at when we are in an industrial shop. Now, your home shop, that's one thing. If you want to have to sort through all that filth in there, fine. But when you are working with other people, we have to be able to find stuff. It stays in good working order that way. So it's really important that we clean up, that we put things back where they are at, or where they came from, I should say, or where they should have come from. So how do we create a safe working environment? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to install everything to code. Now, you guys probably won't be installing very much stuff in our shop. It's already done. But if you're at home, check the codes. All of your equipment and machinery comes with books. You're going to follow what those codes are. The second one is, again, install it to the manufacturer's specs. So if the manufacturer says it has to have 220 instead of 110 voltage, if you like type of outlet, if you have to have so much feet clearance around the piece of equipment, we're going to install it to those specs, because if not, you're opening yourself up to get hurt or get someone else hurt. Keep tools and equipment adjusted and fitted to specs. This is really important. If you walk up to, especially in our shop, we've got a lot of hands on the equipment. If you walk up and something doesn't look right, first question yourself, can I fix this? Is it just something that you need to fix? Second, do I need to go and let Miss Wingard know? And in that case, come tell me, and it may be something where I didn't know it was wrong. The last class didn't tell me this happened. So a good example of this, many, many moons ago, I had a young lady out working in shop. We'd been out there a couple weeks, and she was over at the grinding wheel, and she was taking her little coupon, which is a piece of metal that's, a little bit longer than it is wide, but no bigger than this, maybe more about that size. And they were grinding the metal off, so making a bevel. So when you put them together, there's a notch between the two of them. And she was over there using it just like she had been the last several days. We had been trained on it. I thought all was well. And next thing I know, somebody was coming over to me and said, Sally got her fingers in the grinder. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be like a horror story with, blood everywhere, and did she lose a finger? So the young lady starts walking towards me. I see her as they're talking to me, and she's holding up her hand like this. And what had happened was she was holding a piece of metal, and instead of using a set of pliers and gloves like we had instructed her and demonstrated to her, she was just holding it with her bare hands. Well, when she did that, the metal flipped down because the tool rest had gotten too far away, because it hadn't moved, but the grinding wheel, when we look at it later, you'll see it gets smaller as you use it, and nobody had adjusted that piece of equipment or said we need to adjust it. So it had gotten too big of a gap. So her metal, she was going along, and it kicked down, and it kicked her finger into the grinding wheel, and so it took off part of like an angle like this of her fingernail about halfway up and then into her skin. Now, because it was spinning and there was that friction, there was heat, and it cauterized it. Cauterized would be where they take heat to apply to stop bleeding. And so there really was no blood at all, which was a blessing. But she had, they took her to the doctor, and there was really nothing they could do other than bandage it and let it heal. But that is one of those things where if we had become aware that it needed to be adjusted, then we would have made that adjustment. But that was something that just was an oversight. So that's one of those things. If it doesn't look correct, if it's different than what we talked about, come talk to me. It may be that that piece of equipment is set up differently than what I demonstrated in class. Maybe we get something and it's an old piece or a new piece and it looks different. And so it may be something where I say, nope, you are good, use it. But if you're not sure, question it, ask. I would rather you ask 100 questions than ask none, and we have problems. Use tools and equipment skillfully. So that's what we're going to be building those skills, and that's why I have you demonstrate to me as well. And then storage of our tools and equipment. If you get something out of the tool room or you get it out of a welding booth, at the end of the hour, you need to put it back where you got it. We're going to keep areas clean and free from debris. We are going to sweep every single hour that we are out there. We are going to clean up our tables. We're going to put everything away because, for one thing, that helps you be able to find it. And then also it helps things from getting damaged, as well as keeping the floor from being slick with little grit and dirt. We're going to shield moving parts. So there are shields in place on a lot of the tools and equipment. If there is a safety feature there, we're going to leave it there, even if it's not convenient for you. Let's say I'm using a table saw and there's an arm that comes down with the shield. If my board is too long and runs into that, I'm not going to remove the shield to cut the board. I'm going to figure out a different way to cut the board. Manage shop to avoid falling objects. We're not going to put things that could fall on top of us up high. We do have, whenever we work on something overhead, we do have hard hats, but that's a rarity that we do that. That's usually in our structures class. Avoid the flight path from machines. So the flight path is when like a blade is rotating and it kicks out. Like if we had a board we were bringing in this way on the table saw and that blade is running like this and it hits that board and maybe a little piece of it cuts off, it's going to shoot out this way because that's the way that the blade is going. So we're not going to have somebody stand right on this other side. In fact, a little story with the table saw, back before I was a teacher here, I used to substitute some when I was in college. And one day I was substituting and there was a substitute for Mr. Bergen's job and then a substitute for the teacher. I was a substitute for the person in my job. And when we were both out there, I had sophomores and we were doing a woodworking with hand tools, and then the other teacher had a welding class. At the end of the hour, one of the kids took a little piece of like a triangle wedge of the wood that my group was working with, and they put it in the table saw. And they kind of wedged it in there, and then they turned the table saw on. Well, fortunately, the table saw was facing to where the flight path was to come out and hit the lockers behind it. Put a big old dent in the locker, which the guys kind of chuckled about, thought it was funny. But if that situation had been different, if the table had been turned the other way, it would have aimed right at the students that I was working with. And that wasn't going to be something that was going to go and, hit them on the shoulder and fall off. That would impale somebody at the rate of speed it would have come out of. So it could have been a very different situation had the circumstances been changed just one tiny little way. So we're going to make sure that we're avoiding those and that we are being safe. I guess it's telling me lights out here. We are going to protect the eyes, face, feet, and body. We're going to talk about our PPEs, which is our personal protective equipment, here in a few minutes. We're going to move slowly to avoid hazards. So it's not about how much you get done, like how fast. It is about the quality of the work. And then read and heed all precautions. If there's a precaution out there, we're going to take it.